Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Todge, these are my tanks, and I'm currently hearing myself right about now. This is the first time I've ever knowingly been video recorded, and I'm doing it to myself. In my best interests, I want to put what I've been doing here for the last 4 years into something that I can keep as a log, hopefully help somebody else, and most definitely try and get some help from others that are doing the same things in the hobby that I'm looking into. Where did it all start? I suppose the idea of a tank never really was something that fascinated me. I can remember seeing them in family houses when I was young and kind of found them boring. They always had the same fish, 3 or 4 angelfish, rather large sucker, possibly some type of tetra, definitely neons, and if not that, it was guppies. Guppies, for that reason, never really fascinated me. I don't like things that a lot of other people have. Not necessarily unique, but I'm not a sheep either. I don't wish to follow the crowd. I have a unique outlook on life. My perspective comes from a different aura than most other people's. I actually have autism and ADHD, so I battle continuously between being over perfect and not being able to complete things because I can't focus for long enough. This whole room here that I have built, I spend most of my time and have basically lived in here since I started it. I went from one tank, which started at the start of lockdown. Previous to that, I had brought my daughter a bild off a friend of ours, which was quite cheap. She'd been asking for a pet for a while, and for Christmas I decided to give her a bild. She had some goldfish, and it was for her to look after a potential life lesson as to what happens if we don't care for things, and the need to nurture, watch and care. But it sparked something in my brain that every time I walked past it, I could not stop myself from being lost in the image and the clarity and the sense of no stress that the animals that lived within this sphere had. And I started to find solace in that, so I went and brought a tank. The month after we went into lockdown, I have a very niche habit of Googling the absolute extreme out of everything, and I absorb information quite quickly, and then from information I like to divulge and do it my own way, with some background knowledge to sort of help me and an image of where I would like to be. I quickly went down the route of CO2, high light, high nutrients, because that's what was being shown to me on YouTube, and the tanks looked amazing, and I wanted a pristine tank that looked absolutely gorgeous with plants galore, and I soon realised it will be what the fish want it to be if they want to be happy. They was not happy at the start. They didn't like the water changes that often. They didn't like me being near the tank. Constant battles with algae, pH swings and all sorts of things, until I stumbled across somebody that was doing things in a way that seemed simpler to me. Part of my self-healing and ability to be able to stay calm and maneuver myself in a world where I don't agree with everybody else has come from accepting nature, being around myself and connecting myself to it. So when I discovered the nature style, I quickly adopted it. I watched a couple of other people. MD was probably one of the first people I watched. He did a no filter aquascape, which I thought was fascinating, and then I stumbled across LRB, who is currently the king of no filter, and then I also stumbled across Dr. Novak and his biocenosis films. Biocenosis stuck with me because at the start what I actually did was look into how sewerage systems in the UK remove nitrates from the water that comes out of our sewers. I understand the nitrates are going to be high, and they won't be doing this with too much chemicals because we are required to drink that water again afterwards. And I found that they use sludge. They use low oxygen areas of dirt that they pass water through, and the nitrogen cycle changes. The archaea or bacteria that eats the ammonia does not create a nitrite. It goes straight to nitrogen, and it actually gases off rather than being converted to a form of nitrogen that will hold itself in the water column. So when I discovered that Dr. Novak was doing the same thing with his clay and iron baskets, it came well to me. So I will show you around some of my tanks. I do a couple of different substrates, a couple of different ways I've kept fish, and I still haven't quite decided what my actual final way is. Just sort of a bit of a theme for the tank, what I'm planning on doing with it, whether there's going to be a lot of life in there or only a few fish, whether there's going to be a lot of one plant or not. I've sort of discovered what I can grow and do with how I do things. I will be carrying this on through my channel. The channel is there mainly just as a tool for me to log everything that I do. I forget to take pictures naturally, I never take videos. I get embarrassed by doing things like that. I don't know why, but it makes me feel weird. So the need and the knowing that other people may want to see this is hopefully going to make me start to document what I'm doing a little bit more. I have new ideas every 5 minutes. I change things possibly every half an hour, but I also always keep the same narrative in the same direction. When I created this shed initially, it was because I decided I wanted to keep a certain species. The species I still keep, amongst some others that I have collected over the last 4 years, but also ones that I want to breed. I chose to breed them because I initially did some deep reading into scientific papers on how they breed, where they come from, so on and so forth. The ability of the females from this species is something that captivated me, that I wanted to discover more. I want to know what they do, what they control, and how much they can control of their future species. In the wild, they're slightly different from different regions. I had an initial plan to breed these as wild as possible. We'll touch on that side of the breeding project in another video because it is lengthy and I want to go into detail a bit more about why and what sparked my interest on that. But Mr. I don't like guppies breeds endless. Yes, they are very, very, very close to each other, but they are slightly different. And it was the difference and the not many being around in the UK when I started looking for them that gave me something that I wanted to breed, to play with, to have. So I very quickly went from having my CO2 setup into 2 no filter tanks, and I haven't really turned back since. I do run some filters on a couple of things. When you see them you'll understand why, but I am introducing my shed to you now because it is changing drastically over the next couple of months. I don't live in a place where I have a lot of space that I can play with, but I had a project that went backwards severely, and I've now integrated that into what I call my fish shed. I will show you a little bit later, but again, another video just to show a bit more detail on that and explain what's happening with that. So now I'd like to take a little bit of time and just show you a couple of my tanks. Now I'm just going to show you around a few of my tanks. I'll explain to you what I've got in them, how long I've been keeping them, what I plan to do with them, and also just let you know the other species that I do have, why I have them as well. Basically just give you a bit of a look around of what I've got, a brief one, before it all changes. thank you for pressing play, and if you don't get to the end of the video, thank you for just watching this bit. So first off, I'm going to start with this tank. This is a bow tank, around 180 litres. It's just something I found on Facebook Marketplace when I first started getting fish. It is now only used for rescue fish. Sometimes rescue fish means my partner saw it and there was only a couple in the tank and she needed to rescue them. Hence the pair of dwarf acaras, the Laeticara curviceps, or commonly known as the sheep's head. We also have a angelfish that was rescued from a friend of mine that needed in rehoming. He was being bullied, but he is old. Told he's around 5 to 6 years old. Definitely owns the tank, but he is getting a new home. He will be going in that when it's moved. In here, this is the first time I set up a substrate with my own version, or idea of a version that Dr. Novak uses. So here in the UK we have available something called Monado, which, as you can see, is a red clay substrate. It is inert, but it does contain iron, and as you can see here, I have a rather deep layer of it. I am 4 inches at the front, around 6 at the back, and I will try and find some photos and see if I can edit them in of me building the substrate for this tank. Whilst building the substrate for this tank, there is a small amount of soil under there, along with a capping of sand somewhere in the middle. This tank's possibly 2-3 years old. Some of the original plants was removed due to these crypts absolutely dominating and taking full control. I do like to name my fish. This is Korg. He's quite fond of the camera, as you may notice. I just store wood in here, various other things that will be going into other tanks at some point soon. In here also somewhere he will be hiding is a banded gudgeon that we did rescue from the fish shop again, but he had been harmed. We call him Dig because he has a stump, has no rear tail. It's a horrible tank to try and film. I'm getting rid of it. It's going. I don't like it. It served its purpose very, very, very well. And it's actually turned into quite a nice home for these fish. It's not had a water change for coming up to probably 2 years now. I only ever topped this tank off, and probably since 3 to 4 months after starting it, the water change has stopped, and it is what it is. There is 0 nitrates ever in this tank, and as you can see, things still grow. We come to these 4 24 litre tanks. 3 are currently in use for breeding. 1 did have a bit of a breeding project in it, but I have since cleared that out. I need this space for something else. These are small, cheap tanks. Again, they don't cost a lot to buy new. You can get these, I think, from Pets at Home on offer at the minute for about £25 with a small filter. Some of the various bits that I throw away whenever I get them or pass on to people that need. They're 10 by 10 by 16. and for trios, small breeding groups, I've found they work perfectly fine. These tanks have featured on my shorts, so if you do subscribe you may have seen these before. In here I have an Endler that I actually call Rango. Again, I forget proper names and it's easier for me to remember what I want to call them. And this line particularly, I chose Rango. There's two females in here, one male. He has a snakeskin type bottom, belly more towards the front than the rear. I think he's really pretty. He came from one male. He was in a random tank at the local fish store, again probably a couple of years ago, and I will show you another tank in a minute which he's come from, but I have been trying to breed them out to get them a little closer to what I want before I start really selectively breeding. Moving on to the next one. This contains an Endler line that I am trying to create. I actually call this one Trippy, and if he will allow me to film and maybe get some close-ups of him, you may see why. Pretty simple tanks for breeding. Again, I use the Monado substrate. There is no soil or sand underneath this. There was some fluorite in the base before I put the Monado in when I started, and this tank, and this tank, these are going to be over 2 years old again. Substrate wise, I have changed some things around as regards to plants, hardscape and so on, but the substrates have stayed the same. This substrate is just gravel, just a fine black gravel. There's also a fine sand under there. They are really aged substrates. It was in another tank previous. I don't clean, I just drain the water, take out whatever sediment has been left. That goes in the bottom, and then the cleaner stuff from the tub will go over the top. It's not a very deep substrate in here, but I stocked this with mainly stem plants and moss, as you can see. There is some tiny crypts in there. You can't see at the minute because I haven't been tending to this moss. I've just been trying to push it down and force it to grow thick and fluffy. There is Limnophilia sessiflora in there, along with some sticks and some stone, and it actually creates quite a nice little aquascape that I'm quite proud of. The fry do seem to love it. They definitely love the Limnophilia. It gives them plenty of places to hide. Not that Endlers prey on their young and they need to hide, but security helps them feed better, grow better, and just mature in a better manner. This tank is quite generally shy. In here I have a version from a Japan Blue type line that I have. Again, a random male fish that I brought home and I have been working with to try and get a line. The male in here I think is not really getting on very well with the females, hence why he hides quite a bit. They both may be ready to drop, and I think it's that that's causing them a little bit of stress with them. Again, some floating Limnophilia sessiflora in this one, and then just weeping moss. All the moss that features in these tanks at the minute is weeping moss. I do wish to expand my collection, but I started off with a very little, and I do have quite a collection. I sold loads a couple of months back. Virtually emptied all of my tanks, but it seems to like my water, which most plants do. We will get into that. in another video. But Sessiflora, moss, monardo, mold, detritus, everything settles. It's formed its own unique layer of nutrients, and the monardo itself, actually being a clay, absorbs nutrients from in the water column and can store them in way of a battery type that the roots can access, as well as helping to form that bacteria or archaea culture in the low anoxic conditions right down at the base in the thicker layers, which these are at the back and not so much at the front, with them only being 10-inch tanks. I tried to get as much clear water space at the front to be able to see the fish swim and give them some space. Very simple aquascape. I would love to tell you the name of that plant, but I can't quite remember. I will get it up and I'll Google it, and I will let you know it does feature in a couple of other tanks as well. Watch this space. Not quite sure what's going in here, but there will be something breathing in here soon. So this is the tank that Rango come from, or should I say the Rango line, as I call them. Another simple scape. It's got a lot, and I mean a lot, of fast growing stem plants. I aim to pack this tank full of fish. That is my aim with all tanks, therefore I plant in a manner that can handle that. There is a dwarf Sagittaria in here. There is a crypt, a little green one again. It was a while ago when I brought it, I cannot remember what it's called. I have it in a couple of tanks. It works well in some and not in others, although it is taking off now, which tells me I had too much light, but this is encouraging growth. There is Bacopa australis, which is forming this coverage. Again, absolute heaven for fry. The female endlers love it as well. It gives them comfort away from the males, somewhere to hide, somewhere to take a breather, because they are chased and harassed constantly. It's just in the nature of the endler. I have some Bacopa monieri, I believe. I do need to double check. I have something in the tank that is sprouting out of the water. I'm just waiting for the flowers just to make sure that I am right with the one I've got. It could potentially be Carolinia. And this is Hygrophila polysperma, also known as swampweed. I can see why it does grow like a weed, but again, helps to remove nitrates out of the water, and the fish love it. Having trouble again getting these to focus on the fish. The line is relatively clean, I'd say about 70%, all looking the same with few features different here and there. Again, a nice tank. I love the aesthetic of it. The fish are always happy. The tank itself was actually the first one that I brought way back just before lockdown. I have a bit of an affinity for it, and yeah, it definitely started something that's brought me a lot of happiness. Directly above that tank, again, if you've seen my shorts, you will have seen this tank. It featured in a bit of a trimming video the other day. It does remain slightly cloudy, has done since I set it up. This wasn't one of my best substrate scenarios. I was trying a new compost, and I tried to keep as much organic matter in there as possible, all the larger bits, and I had a lot of gassing off at the start. Settled when the plants started to grow in, never had any issue with the fish life. The gas actually helps the plants. It occurs in nature and it doesn't worry me. The fish in here have always been happy. I have taken quite a few out, but there is still quite a lot in here. They thrive well. Again, I like to keep a good amount of coverage on the top. It helps break down the amount of lights. I don't have all the same lights. These are actually Aqua LED retrofit tubes, because the tank down there that I showed you a moment ago is a Aqua LED 75. It came with the blue white day and night light. I didn't like it. I swapped it for one of the sunny versions. Plants grew a lot better, a little bit less algae, and quite generally not quite as bright. Didn't cause me as much problems. Again, weeping moss scattered. This was emptied not long ago. I filled a container with it. I will show you that. There's carbon relish shrimp within here. This is just the base tank for them. As I brought them and they've bred out, I pull from this different lines that I want to create. I have some crypts. I believe it's the same one that's in the bow tank I showed you earlier, and if I'm not wrong, or maybe wrong, definitely probably wrong, it might be Cryptocoryum wentii brown. I did buy a couple and I can't remember which ones got put in what tank. We also have Ludwigia repens diamond super red, which loves to grow out of the tank. I have had this go crazy a couple of times just for the fun of it. I had it lying over the top of 2 or 3 tanks just with immense root structure beneath, creating an ideal biotope for some fish. These though does take some maintaining, which I don't like. I like to look at my fish not being in the tanks, and mainly because of this vallison area. Once it gets hold, it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows and it spreads even faster than that. But it creates some beautiful scenery, and always looks organic, especially when it's not trimmed. This is the line of the Japan Blues that I was speaking about. Still throws some oddities, but for a made up line from one initial male, it's doing quite well. No real cause for deformities or inbreeding abnormalities. I am just trying to decide what I want the line to look like. Now I have a good group to pull from. I quite like the plains. I absolutely love the lyre tail ones that I've got. I'll see if we can get some footage of them later, but definitely something that I'm interested in working with when the shed has changed. So this tank here, it's just a little 10 gallon. Throwing a line set up here. I initially gave these all to my partner for her to play with, to have fish in and such. She has decided that she's taken some fish out and wants to breed them, ones that she likes. She prefers the more plainer, more wild type antlers, which I also do, but I also like making my own. This one houses some of the Japan blue line, a couple of ones that we like the look of, lyre tails. This particular one has a centre peacock and some yellow markings, which are quite nice. I do believe we are pulling in for a line to look like that, along with some of the more plainer ones and the more wild type with no colour in the tail. But this is just a holding tank for these, just to see what we can get out of these a little bit more selectively bred. This tank also features some random shrimp just to help keep the tank clean. A lot of Bacopa compacta, which has come from various tanks, so I'm just hoarding it here until things change around and they've got somewhere new to go. And again, Bacopa, trying to grow some out just to see what it's like. More crypts, more dwarf sage and more moss. The algid stones and wood had a nice effect in this tank. Yeah, just a cool little tank. This tank has some random inhabitants to it. It again has more endlers. These are hybrids. They was crossed with a Dumbo dragon guppy, and we are currently pulling out the smaller males with the dragon and Dumbo features to try and generate a smaller sized Dumbo endler hybrid. Not my line, it's just something my partner wants to work on, and I encourage it. They're quite cute. It also houses, not quite sure if you can see, but there is a giant African fan shrimp back there. He actually loves it in this tank. There is another one in the bow tank which I forgot to mention, and we haven't seen since he went in there, but I did warn my partner that would be the case because of the coverage, and the bow tank does actually have a filter on, which I didn't mention. It's just a hang on the back that doesn't get cleaned, and it's just there for small water movement. Again, another one of my partner's tanks. This is just moss. There is cool shrimp from one of her tanks, along with various growing out endlers that she will be selecting from to create a line. Again, the Ludwigia super repens growing out the top. Always is a nice feature. I will quickly go through these tanks. This one isn't the best for looking in, but as you can see, this houses my all carbon blue shrimp. They're hard to see. There isn't many of them. The line is very selective bred. Most of the darker ones are actually coming out with red in them when they mature, so I have to reset quite often. There's also some Anubias Nana Barteri in there, growing out, attached to some wood, along with some Anubias Nana Petite doing the same. Plenty of moss, hiding spaces for the shrimp, makes them absolutely love the tank. This is partners, it's being left for a reason to look like this. We don't routinely clean glass, and if we do, it's only over the front. She has a video she wants to do scraping this off. If you want to see any of her videos, you can look up B the Aquatic 1. So that's B, the letter B for Bravo, the Aquatic 1. She likes to upload some videos of her stuff. This contains a plethora of red cherry shrimp. There is some rillies in there as well. Again, the rillies are mine. I need to take them out when I have a tank for them specifically. And she is breeding a line of Sakura red shrimp from them. Interestingly, I've only ever brought white shrimp and blue shrimp, and I have almost as many red shrimp as both of them. A random tank, wood storage, and males from the tank of my partners I was showing you a minute ago, with the more natural types that we're just keeping to one side away from the females for now, until we can find them somewhere to breed when I have collected some more tanks. Some new handlers in the fish shed, only came in a couple of days ago. I don't have anything that's blonde, so when I saw some of these in a random tank, I had to purchase them from the local fish store. I've not even had them a week yet. They are in there with some females, so if they're going to go into a quarantine tank, I have plenty of females, so why not quarantine some with these and they can start breeding. They can produce me something. We'll see how the lines cross, because I did only get males. That's quite generally how it happens with these, especially in the UK. So we'll see what I can get out of these in the future. In here there is a male that came out of the plain tank. It may be a bit hard to get the colours on him because he's got a lot above him, not in front of him, but he is actually a ghost type handler. He only sheens a sort of blue and green, and he has an extremely long top sword. I will try and get some better footage of him for you, but again, this is another line that's just been started in preparation for when things have changed and there's more tanks about. And I'm just going to come quickly through these. These have featured already quite heavily on my shorts. This is a 4-foot tank that I've chosen not to fill. It has 2 Monstera deliciosas in it, as well as some form of pennywort, I think it is. It's something that my partner has grown in the house. I wanted to see if it grew in the tank. It really does like it. Apart from the roots didn't grow down, it uprooted itself and then it has toppled over, and now it just lies and grows. Leaves decay quite nice, give good amount of food. There is a pair of Apistogramma McMaster eyes in here. A bit hard to pick out. The male is currently within the root system of the Monstera. There's some of the crypts in here that we had in the other video, along with some wood, moss, limnophilia, and some giant bacopa. This is actually the tank that I want to flower. I previously had it before I changed it to this style. I moved everything down there. I did have bacopa growing out of the top with flowers, just didn't really get any footage or pictures of it, so I would like to get that back. That's my partner's new 4-foot tank, which we are currently housing the old breeding project out of there in, and some plants that I got cheap from the local fish store. I'm just trying to get to convert and ready for when things change around the fish shed. I will also be planting or propagating and putting in pots quite a few more plants out of the other tanks. Again, just ready for the new project, just to make sure that I have enough to do what I want to do and at least set up the tanks that I want to set up from the start. right away. This is a little 16 by 8 by 8. I'm currently using to force grow some Anubias, Nanobarteri. This is just being grown immersed, sealed lead, high humidity. Never done it before, just thought I'd try it. Not a fan of immersed growth, it's not to be sold. I was asked by the local fish store whether or not I could supply some plants on wood. It's a way of getting some more growth so that I can do that without spending so much. And this is just a little treat for a friend of mine. It's a little piece of wood that he asked for. I'm just currently attaching some microcerm to it, just a regular Java fern, just as a little gift for him. This is the high amount of moss that I actually pulled out of the tank I showed you earlier. Don't know how well you can pick it up, but there is a lot of seed shrimp moving about in there. And I'm actually quite happy to see that. I hadn't noticed that up until just, but I did take some moss out of this tank the other day to seed a new tank. So yes, have some nice amount of seed shrimp in there. It's going to do well. I will start a new culture with that as soon as I have some available space, or I can just leave it all growing in here. I'm not quite sure how well you can pick that up, or if you can. Underneath these two, this is my 90-gallon sump tank. This is used to pump water through my Oscar pond, which I will show you in a second. It's a metre wide, 620 millimeters high, and 555 millimeters deep, so it's a decent sized tank. Scaped okay. There was a large amount of Vallisneria in there, but I really do not think that the light that I've got above here is doing any plants in here justice. You can tell from the bottom of this Hygrophila polysperma that below a certain point it definitely struggled, but as soon as it has reached the light, it's blossomed again and is currently loving life, and is its usual beautiful vibrant shade of green, almost yellow, and then when it gets to the top you get some nice tingy reddy pinky brown colours come through. Limnophilia sessiflora again taking a slow growth due to the lack of light right down at the base of this tank. It can also be seen in the quality of the dwarf sage in this tank. Some of it is very weak and faded. Again, light, and the substrate in this, although it is covered in Monado, there is no sand compost mix in this. Believe it or not, this actually is around 4 inch deep. This sits below 4 inch of insulation on some insulation, so it is a lot deeper than it sees. It's around 6 to 8 inches at the back. Don't think we'll be able to see that very well. Quite a lot of bacopa at the back, again sprouting out the top, which is what I want. I would see some more colour from outside of the top of my tanks. As far as fish, this tank is full of male endlers, all the ones that I've liked from different breeding projects over the time. Just a collection in case I do need to revert any genes back anywhere. I just because they didn't fit, but they was cool. This is actually primarily where I like to pick fish from for breeding, and is somewhat like some breeding projects that I have for the future. This tank also houses some platies that I rescued from somebody. There was a couple when I put them in. There's probably more now. Not quite sure what kind of platy they are. I have asked for advice on shorts and didn't get a response. I do think there's some type of variated green platy. They do look slightly different in this tank compared to the one I kept them in at the start. There is a lot of Ottosinclaus in here. I have a bit of a thing for Ottos, quite like them. They do a good job, and I think they're insanely cute, especially in this environment when they start to group together and move around together and clean spots in a group. It's good to watch. There's around 18, possibly less, possibly more, Ottosinclaus in this tank, along with thousands and thousands of white snowball shrimp, Neocardinia. These was the first shrimp that I actually brought. A bit hard to shoot in this tank and see. They are absolutely everywhere. The colony is probably 4 years old. It's just moved from tank to tank. This is where the reds came from, and they are everywhere. They've been non-stop breeding since I've had them. I have some that I selectively breed that's in the tank with Rango, but these I am allowing to revert. They do get a fishbone pattern on them when allowed to mature. Really nice. That's it. That's what I refer to as the sump. And once again, all this is going to be changing rather soon, so I thought it'd be nice just to have a little bit of a documentary of it, just to show you what's been going on. Over here we have the Oscar pond. That there was Rose. She's the biggest in the tank. So that there is Rose. She's the biggest. I haven't had a chance to check yet who's male and who's female in here. The one you can see at the back we call Pablo. He's a Colombian wild caught Oscar. He tends to stay really pale in here. I say he. We just call him Pablo. He could be the she. They have paired since going into this pond. Pablo is actually about 6 months younger than Rose, and they are roughly about the same size now. There is also a smaller Oscar currently hiding down there called Tyson, and just poking his head out of the plant pot is another one called Fred. Fred and Rose was initially brought together, although I do believe when they was in their grow up tank that something's happened, and Fred seems to be slightly stumped. Although he is still growing, he just did not grow at the pace that she did. So I have heard stories about stumped growth, why, and I will touch on that in the future if you do want to know a little bit more about it. The smaller one that he is called Tyson. Here's a Colombian type wild Oscar. You're just waiting to see how his coloration grows up. plenty of wood, no plants in there at the minute, apart from this one lonely Valentin area that you may be able to see, but that is just a sand substrate, there's nothing in there. The water is pumped out of the sump, along and back in, and then it goes through this pipe from the bottom and siphons back down into the sump. He's just there just to help strip some nitrates from the Oscar pond. Again, we top this up quite a lot. It does have an auto siphon on it that I can show you from here, so we top this up quite a bit. I fell out with the pond, fell out with HDPE liner. Every time I've brought it and tried it, it leaks. No matter what you do, it leaks. It leaks when you buy it, before you even put it in. So I won't be using that ever again after the 18th time of trying and still having leaks. But because it's constantly being filled from here, I lose the height and depth in water in the sump. So we top this up, well, at least once a week, maybe like 30-40 litres overflow. And the whole system sits usually around 15 to 20 nitrates, that's ppms, but I very rarely test. It's only if I start to notice anything different or any issues. They all seem very happy. And last but not least, I will bring you down to the 3 tanks that we like to call the fridge. Just generally because they sit at a lower temperature than everything else in the shed. On the left, how well you can pick that up, but this is my Daphnia culture. I say Daphnia, I am awaiting a microscope so that I can be more specific about the crustaceans that are living within this water. I've seeded it with multiple live foods that you can get from your local fish stores, come in pre-sealed packets. There I have some darker, more black types, some with swimmers and I don't know what the proper term is for the arms that flail through the water to collect their food. Some have these in the front, some have them in the back, some have collections of different, all types of shapes. Some swim one way, some swim another. So I really do want to get them under a microscope just so I can answer some questions in my own little brain and just explain to me a little bit more about the life that I have currently in this tank. These two, not 100% sure how many people agree with, but the cool females from some of the breeding projects keep down here in the fridge. Again, the water temperature is slightly cooler than the rest of the shed. These sit around 21 to 22 degrees. Endlers are fine at low temperatures. Personally, I've kept them in unheated tanks down to 16 for periods of months over winter, and their gestation for pregnancy changed. They carried longer, the brood was larger, but the fish was fine. I just fed very sparingly and didn't rush to warm the water back up when the weather started changing. But these are kept predominantly as live foods for the Oscars. Don't do it with all my fish, but the cool females quite generally do. They get fattened up well, they're fed good with cultures, high quality foods, and again they're full of young, so they're more nutritionally packed per ounce or gram, whichever way you want to go. Well, at least that's my view on it. But yeah, occasionally the Oscars do get to eat some anglers. as well as varying other diets like mealworms, fruits, nuts, and other things. So that there is Rose. She's the biggest. I haven't had a chance to check yet who's male and who's female in here. The one you can see at the back we call Pablo. He's a Colombian wild caught Oscar. He tends to stay really pale in here. I say he, we just call him Pablo. He could be the she. They have paired since going into this pond. Pablo is actually about 6 months younger than Rose, and they are roughly about the same size now. There is also a smaller Oscar currently hiding down there called Tyson, and just poking his head out of the plant pot is another one called Fred. Fred and Rose was initially brought together, although I do believe when they was in their grow up tank that something's happened, and Fred seems to be slightly stumped. Although he is still growing, he just did not grow at the pace that she did. So I have heard stories about stumped growth, why, and I will touch on that in the future if you do want to know a little bit more about it. The smaller one that he is called Tyson. Here's a Colombian type wild Oscar. You can just see how his coloration grows up. Plenty of wood. No plants in there at the minute, apart from this one lonely vallecin area that you may be able to see, but that is just a sand substrate. There's nothing in there. The water is pumped out of the sump, along and back in, and then it goes through this pipe from the bottom and siphons back down into the sump. He's just there just to help strip some nitrates from the Oscar pond. Again, we top this up quite a lot. It does have an auto siphon on it that I can show you from here. So we top this up quite a bit. I fell out with the pond. I fell out with HDPE liner. Every time I've brought it and tried it, it leaks. No matter what you do, it leaks. It leaks when you buy it, before you even put it in. So I won't be using that ever again after the 18th time of trying and still having leaks. But because it's constantly being filled up from here, I lose the height and depth in water in the sun. So we top this up at least once a week, maybe like 30-40 litres overflow. And the whole system sits usually around 15 to 20 nitrates. That's ppms. But I very rarely test. It's only if I start to notice anything different or any issues. They all seem very happy. And last but not least, I will bring you down to the 3 tanks that we like to call the fridge. Just generally because they sit at a lower temperature than everything else in the shed. On the left, how well you can pick that up, but this is my Daphnia culture. I say Daphnia. I am awaiting a microscope so that I can be more specific about the crustaceans that are living within this water. I've seeded it with multiple live foods that you can get from your local fish stores, come in pre-sealed packets. There I have some darker, more black types, some with swimmers, and I don't know what the proper term is for the arms that flail through the water to collect their food. Some have these in the front, some have them in the back, some have collections of different, all types of shapes. Some swim one way, some swim another. So I really do want to get them under a microscope, just so I can answer some questions in my own little brain and just explain to me a little bit more about the life that I have currently in this tank. These two, not 100% sure how many people agree with, but the cool females from some of the breeding projects keep down here in the fridge. Again, the water temperature is slightly cooler than the rest of the shed. These sit around 21 to 22 degrees. Endlers are fine at low temperatures. Personally, I've kept them in unheated tanks down to 16 for periods of months over winter, and the gestation for pregnancy changed. They carried longer, the brood was larger, but the fish was fine. I just fed very sparingly, and didn't rush to warm the water back up when the weather started changing. But these are kept predominantly as live foods for the Oscars. Don't do it with all my fish, but the cool females quite generally do. They get fattened up well, they're fed good with cultures, high quality foods, and again they're full of young, so they're more nutritionally packed per ounce or gram, whichever way you want to go. Well, at least that's my view on it. But yeah, occasionally the Oscars do get to eat some anglers, as well as varying other diets like mealworms, fruits, nuts and other things.